introductions. I had the pleasure to tour the streets of Tel Aviv in October 2019 with Dede, BandAid, and Nitzan, Mintz. That seems like years and years, a lifetime ago. These are both remarkable artists who work in Tel Aviv and who have been working in New York for the last 2 years. Please Google them to get a complete bio. But they are the creative duo behind the posters that you saw in the film. Artists who blend images, words, and design to engage audiences in profound and moving ways, as we saw in this film. Also right next to me, it is an honor to have Nim Shapira, also here in Omaha with us tonight, who is an Israeli-born but New York-based filmmaker, creative director, and multidisciplinary artist. Who has created the film that we saw this evening. And I had so many questions, so little time. I was struck, Nim, by how you were able, in just over an hour, blend together so many different threads. First, you're able to present the story of the posters, which became a defining symbol of the war. At the same time, you illustrate how the hanging and the tearing of the posters became a political battle in itself over public space and over who controls the narrative, and at the same time explore what was life for family members who are not in Israel but watching all of this unfold and how the complication of all this. So I kind of want to start off by taking us back to the beginning with all of you, but Nim, if you could think back to the beginning, why did you make this film? When did you decide that you had something to say? And how did it evolve over the months that you worked on
it? Thank you for having me. I'm going to answer the question, I'm going to remember it.
Yeah, you remember.
At first, I just want to say thank you all for coming. Thank you to Naomi and the JCC for having us. And thank you, Susie, for hosting us. And I'm going to answer the question real quick. I just want to update the end cards that you saw. I have a mistake there. Out of the 251 hostages that were kidnapped and stolen from their homes on October 7, over 40 nationalities, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, only 168 were returned alive. The rest were killed, murdered, died during the captivity or during October 7. The second update is that Omer Neutra's body was released by Hamas while you were watching the film. So I'm very happy for his family that they have a closure and a grave to go to. Of course, it's not a real joy because he was an extraordinary human being, and I'm at least happy that their journey of fighting is over. After they learned of his, the fact that he was murdered on October 7, and that was like a year and 2 months after October 7. So they were trying to get as many eyes from the international community to release him. They learned about his death a year and 2 months in, and they continued advocating for the release of all the hostages up until now. So, yeah. So I'm gonna update the end count. I've been living in New York for I also wanted to thank one more person. I wanted to thank Itai. Where is Itai? Itai for his amazing initiative. There has been, I think, almost 1,000 soldiers that fell since October 7. And it's very heartbreaking to say this, but the focus was mostly on releasing all the hostages. So sometimes we couldn't even, as like the Jewish community or the Israelis, we couldn't even grieve for the fallen because the urgent thing was to release the live hostages. So this is an amazing initiative, and thank you for that. I have been living in New York for 13 years, and it's been, of course, life-changing the past 2 years. I've been in a lot of different communities that ostracized me just because I'm Israeli, and these are friends and colleagues that before October 7 were friends and colleagues, and it changed in a second. So I'm not in Israel, I'm in New York. I wanted to make a movie about the other home that I have been living in for 13 years. And the number one question that I wanted to ask was, why is Kfir Bibas's poster, a 9-month-old baby, is being torn? But then this question, throughout the making of the film, became 3 questions. Why is empathy a limited resource? Can multiple things be true at the same time? And can we have disagreements without dehumanizations? And navigating this cognitive dissonance and making a film while the war is still going on was extremely challenging. How am I able to walk between the raindrops and not get wet? Because I did want to zigzag between the narratives and try and make sense of what is happening. And yeah, like you asked me about the interviewees, I would say all of them, I see myself in them, and they kind of like bring out my complicated, I would say, how do you say, like split personality, So yeah, I interviewed over 40 people, and through these amazing 10 interviewees, I was able to explore the difficulties of being a Jew in America after October 7.
And how did you meet the 2 people next to you?
It's a question for us or for him?
I spoke so much, I'm sorry.
So where the thing works?
Yes.
So we have a mutual friend who kept on telling us, how is it possible that no one had ever made a film about what you guys did? So she rang Nim, and we had like a blind date, the 2 of us and Nim, and the entire time we had dinner, he was sitting quietly. Dede and I spoke and told him the story. And Nim is a very chatty person, so when he's silent, something is happening inside his brain. So after half an hour, he stood. He barely touched the food, I think. Yeah, maybe.
I ate all the food.
So he stood and he said, I have to go home, I have a movie to make.
That's a great story. Can you tell us, the 2 of you, a little bit about how the early days of this campaign? Here you were in New York on a residency here for 1 month, and you talked about wanting to do something in the street. So can you just talk about some of what it was like 2 years ago as you thought about this?
Yeah, so Nitzan and I both come from practice of street art. We do street art for over a decade, and site-specific artworks, installations, and we were in New York. We didn't know what to do. We thought if we can maybe go and volunteer in something in Israel. Of course, there were no flights at the time, and there was a huge chaos. We didn't know what we can do. We wanted to use the practice that we know, everything, all the tools that we know to create something, to bring awareness, to scream everything that we felt, and just put it out there, because it seems like on the street nobody knew about it. We went outside and everything was the same in New York. For us, we felt like the ground is burning, like the home is destroyed. And that's how we started. We thought about this campaign of the milk cartons and the missing kids, and we wanted to talk like in a language that people on the street will visually, that they will understand it, something they know. And so we decided to use this language and create posters on the street. And the first days of the campaign, We didn't know to call it a campaign back then. We didn't know what's going to happen. We thought that by the weekend everything will be finished. We were very naive. Every day was a surprise. It grew and rolled to be a campaign, but we couldn't predict anything, so really every day was a surprise.
So just in short, it started by us designing that and distributing that, and we printed 2,000 copies and we crossed Manhattan, and really I think the success of the campaign came from the refusal of the general public in taking part in the campaign. Because walking there with the heavy box and getting so many no's and refusals, and people actually ignored us, like, you know, it's a very New Yorkie experience to be ignored when you need something or when you try to hand something to a stranger. So after receiving all those no's for an entire day, we were exhausted and we were desperate to get the hell out of this country. I mean, what is going on with these people? But instead, we uploaded the files to the cloud into like a Dropbox file, and the Jewish community in the beginning, it was the Israelis in Manhattan, they picked it up, and the morning after, the entire city was already covered with posters. So this is how it started. Then we ran with it for a whole year, making it more professional, and we established a database where you can download like a proper website, and the families kept on asking and requiring for their loved ones to be part of this guerrilla campaign. It had many aspects, this campaign, like projecting on the UN building, and doing crazy like billboard guerrilla initiatives. It was a pretty large campaign.
When did you realize that they were going to be decisive, that there was going to be this public response, and were you prepared for that kind of response?
We weren't prepared for anything, really. We didn't know what's going to happen, and when it did started to roll, we never thought it's going to leave first New York, then the US, then after a few days that we saw we're getting photos from all over the world, we thought, okay, it's going to stop here. And then suddenly we see billboards, we get tons of articles, and media outlets invite us to give interviews, and we got to places where we never thought we were going to.
But in the original file, the first one we ever published, it's like the day after, we had an additional like PDF file attached, which was like a kind of like a disclaimer or a mini warning. It's like,
And
do
instructions.
instructions. So it's like, do not pick up fights with strangers. If someone is harassing you while you put the posters, don't get into conflict, just leave the area peacefully. So these were it was like a small gut feeling that just because we are Israelis and dealing with that manner, things might go wrong, but could we expect like the outrage and the anti-Semitism? Never.
It's also something that we thought about because we create in the streets for years. We know sometimes our artworks, they don't make it, the day after or a week, because sometimes it's the weather, but many times it's other people tearing them down and going over it, writing over it. And we knew there are conflicts in the public sphere. Not everyone thinks the same. People have different opinions. But in this case, we didn't think anyone will mess with the posters, because from our perspective, how come anyone want to, tear down a poster? It's only humanitarian. You want to help to bring them home. How come someone want to destroy this mission?
Nim, can you talk a little bit about how you maybe thought differently about the film today? You know, you were at this in 23, it is now 25. You've had an opportunity to engage with audiences, and what have you learned in the last little while?
I will say that when I made the film, it was an invitation for a conversation from me to the other side. Like they paused their life and their artistic practice for a year. Nitzan makes it sound very like, we did this, and then it's obvious that we did this, and then it's obvious, but it's not. It's like very difficult. They paused their lives and they stopped. They moved to New York to practice, to work on their art, and they just, left everything and did this. And if you're in the mindset of October 2023, we didn't know how many hostages were taken. We didn't know who's dead and who's alive. We didn't know the names. So it wasn't clear in a day, and they took initiative before it was clear. They were like the first. It's not just that the public needed this project, it's also that they kept it alive, and it was kind of like the source for information of like who was taken hostage, not only from people on the other side of the world, but also families of the hostages reached out to them and asked them, can you update the file and put our loved one in your database, because no one's talking to us, because we don't have anyone to talk to and we can't find our loved one. So if you're asking what I did in the first 3 months, I was volunteering with the Hostage Family Forum, both in New York and in Israel. And I just saw that we're echo-chambered and siloed, and every campaign that we're doing, even though we had some really great campaigns, was not reaching to other people that are not within the Jewish community, and that's like another reason why I wanted to make the film. And working on the film, again, when there's a wall, was very difficult, because like, do I keep the encampments in the universities a part of the film, or like how do I make it evergreen? So when you watch the film in 10 years, it's still gonna capture the kind of like the zeitgeist, or it's a time capsule to winter 2023 from October 7th to the first hostage deal. So what do I focus on, and what is the story that I want to tell? And I will say that every time I watch the film, the new, like with Omer being released now, every time I watch the film, something happened in the news. So I always say, it's like, you can't enter the same river twice because you're not the same person. It's not the same, and it's not the same river. You tweak it. You look. This is like, maybe this scene should be later, and maybe this should be removed because it doesn't make sense. I would say that we screened it since October 7, 2024. So this is, I think, our 100th screening. And we've been really happy to touch not only Jewish communities all across the United States, from Seattle to Miami, but also we screened it in universities in Columbia and NYU, Harvard, and Stanford, and a lot of other universities, in museums. We screened it in interfaith communities. And we had amazing conversations, not just with the Jewish community, Jews that are on the Jews that are more conservatives, and Jews that are more liberal, but also we've spoken to people from Venezuela, from Egypt, from Jordan, from Nigeria, from China. So, and a lot of people, first of all, some people didn't even know about the posters. Then people were like, yeah, we know about the posters. We didn't know people were turning them down. And then, it's been such a hard time as a Jewish American that sometimes people bring their non-Jewish friends, and I'm proud of the fact that it's hard for Jewish Americans sometimes to put into words what they feel. So I had someone that brought their non-Jewish friend to the film and said, this is how I feel, please watch the movie with me, and it opened the eyes of the non-Jew. So, and Muslim Americans and Mormon Americans and Christian Americans. Like, we had amazing conversations. I will say that we mostly screen it in Jewish spaces. I am very happy to say that we are qualified for the Academy Awards that is happening this February 2026. It's a very long, don't clap yet, we're just qualified. We're not nominated. We just qualified. We are running an Oscar campaign. If you know anyone from who's an Academy member that is, he or she can vote for documentary movies, please tell them about the film. But there are 200 films competing. Also, PBS 13 are going to broadcast the film tomorrow night, and then it's gonna be a shorter version, a 56-minute. It's gonna live on YouTube, and then you can also, so it's the 56-minute, and then you can rent for like $2.99 the version that you just saw, torn-film.com, and that is my hope, that more people that are non-Jews would see the film and see that this is not a film about the Middle East. This is a film about America. This is a film about empathy, about freedom of speech, and it's been a very, very lonely experience. I will say that as someone who lives in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, you know, you want to go out for a coffee, and the entire street has globalized the Intifada and by all means necessary. So you go on your phone, and everything you see on your feed is things that you just like. You don't understand how these are your friends that are posting this. So it's been a very, again, I'm giving very long answers, I'm sorry, but it's been a very lonely experience. So when I screened it to students from the new school, it was we screened it with audiences of 600 people sitting in the audience, but we also screened it to 20 students who are like Jewish students in Parsons University or in the new school. And when you're screening it to non-Jews, it's a different experience where you're screening it to 20-year-old Jewish kids that a day ago didn't know where Israel is on the map because they're just, they're kids, and now they are being ostracized and harassed just because they have a Magen David, a Star of David on their necklace. So with them, the conversations were eye-opening, and they talked about the fact that they need extra security when they are doing a movie night, or the fact that no one is saying hi to them, and it's just like the first week of school. And you really don't know what to say to those kids because this is not normal what they're going through. So the film was kind of like a way to... It's always interesting to have the conversations after the film, and every person reacts differently. And yeah, you've seen it too. Like, everyone has their story with the posters.
So you are all three highly creative people thinking about empathy, thinking about the world. What have you learned that you're going to take forward in what you're thinking about next? I mean, you've devoted a year to this. You came to New York to make art. You have this campaign. So what's next for you as an artist as you think about this?
So basically now we are focusing on releasing some of the traumas from our system. And as two creators that function as one, we are experiencing a creativity boom. Like, we constantly create new series that are dealing in a very abstracted way, I must say, with the war, with the aftermath of the war, with our personal grief, and with the collective grief. Never in our lives we have painted in those styles, techniques, color palettes, And with all that baggage in our minds, which is like trapped, and it has to be released in our case through art and visual poetry. I'll give you a tiny example. We were invited exactly 1 year after this harsh, hard year we ran the campaign. It was like a miracle. We were invited by a very big collector to his farm in Martha's Vineyard. And it was such an isolated place, and Dede and I were selected to just have a studio there and create alone, to think and to create. Immediately when we arrived, we, as two very post-traumatic people, had created a link in our minds to Martha's Vineyard and the kibbutzim. Both very different, but if you follow my lead, you'll see how well connected they are visually. We're talking about a green environment with farmers riding the trucks and people driving their club cars, waving hello, being friendly, chickens and cows, and the entire scenery is a very kibbutz-like. So we documented Martha's Vineyard from the perspective of October 7th and the kibbutzim, which is very traumatic. So usually in the art world, you have this amazing, like, famous artist spending time in Martha's Vineyard and painting the beautiful houses and the sunsets and the ocean, and everything is so beautiful and relaxing, because it is. In our series, it's a traumatic Martha's Vineyard. It's like a very bloody, gory, full with life and death. So this is how it affects us.
With that, I think we are probably at a point in the program, if I know my schedule, where we want to open up for questions from the audience. And our panelists would welcome questions about the film and their own work, their own creative work. And I want to sort of say this in a rather direct way again. We're looking for questions about the film and the artist's work, and we're less interested in sort of declarations or statements. And I think Naomi is out there here, and she is going to help select if there's any questions from the audience.
Thank you. Amazing nuance in that. It was really great. What did you think of the media coverage, locally and nationally, of everything being torn down? I'm in national media. That White House press briefing was very disturbing. But also, I didn't see that much here in national media about these things being torn down. Did you feel you got fair coverage? Or did you feel that the media was also guilty to a sense in helping perpetrate this anti-Semitism and everything that we see in the movie?
Can I answer? Okay. So they blessed us with 2 weeks of decent coverage, which was neutral, pretty neutral. So they gave us some respect in the early beginning. And then after 2 weeks, all hell broke loose. I mean, it was a pretty rough year. Let me tell you something about the benefits of bad media. After 2 weeks of being documented, and Dede and I spoke on everywhere you wanted. We went to Fox Live, CNN, New York Times, you name it, we were there. We were interviewed seven times a day. After that, what happened, that the people started tearing down the posters, and then the media tilted the angle, and they wanted to understand through us, why are people tearing down the posters? So we used their platform again in order to talk about the hostages without really answering their question, because please, why are you asking me? Ask the people who tear down the poster. I'm not their ambassador. I'm not here to explain them. So the people who really hated us and tore down the poster gave us 6 months of media coverage to speak about the hostages. Think about that. So it's pretty incredible.
I also want to add to that with the media coverage, I think it's very hard, and I'm not saying this I'm not forgiving the media, I'm just stating a fact that, first of all, we are, as I said earlier, very siloed and very echo chambered. This is not just in the social media algorithms, it's also, if you watch MSNBC, that's all the news you get. I think that some news make it throughout the entire spectrum, but it's very hard to keep track of what's happening, and it's also, I would say, because there's a competition, they don't want to cover things that have already happened. I'm very happy that the posters were covered throughout the media spectrum. I will say that that's what I try to show in the film, that I'm bringing footage from Al Jazeera all the way to Fox News. And I will say that also that the media that covered the film in the past year that it's out has been also like New York Post all the way to MSNBC and CNN. So that's something that I'm proud of, kind of like touching different communities with the film. And also want to say that you asked me about why I made the film. I just want to say that posters get bleached from the sun and the rain washes them away. And I had a screening last week in Long Island, and there was an old man that asked, how will they forget October 7 and what happened in 10 years or 20 years or something? So I said, people forget, people don't forget, but I think that if the postal war wasn't documented, and it's such a kind of like a microaggression, as Americans call it, but it's a microcosm of the American society, and of course we see it in other places around the world, including in Israel, but it's such a, you can say, there's not a lot of meat in this to make a movie about, but I would say that people will not remember how much they hated us or ostracized us or ignored us or ignored our pain. And that is something that I'm proud to have captured in the film.
One more question.
Love documentary film, and I thought this is fabulous. I have, from a storytelling question, trying to follow this, did you ever think about time dating some of that information so we kind of knew during the timeline of how things went through? For example, when they had the press secretary conversation, when they had the UN secretary conversation, did you ever think about time stamping it so I kind of knew the narrative of the story, so I knew where this had happened since the event?
So yes and no. Some of the things I had to move a week here or there just so it fits the narrative, but there are 3 titles that say October 2023, November 2023, and December 2023. And there are some timestamps, but yeah, some of the things I had to move around just for the emotional arc of the film. But thank you for the question.
Okay. Oh, one more question.
One more question back here.
Thank you again. I think it's a wonderful film. I really appreciated the active nature of the campaign, that people were really, it gave people things to do, and it allowed for nuance, and you don't always, like you said, that 2 things can be true, both within our Jewish community and broader. My question is, now that, thank God, the live hostages have all been returned, and as we're hearing more bodies are being returned, is there another campaign or something that can embody both of those things of having that nuance and having that, how can somebody be ripping off the, Queer Bebos's picture, but also that gives people the touch and the direct access to do something.
I would say that the hostage families that haven't received their loved ones are asking us to still wear the ribbons and bring them home dog tags. And we should not stop speaking about it because they do feel that they have been forgotten, because there's such a relief with the living hostages that have been released. I always remind people that all of the living hostages have been released, but if they were, the dead hostages were alive for a certain point and then they died in captivity. I will say that there are a lot of ways to advocate for your beliefs, whether it's putting a mezuzah or wearing a yarmulke or wearing a Star of David necklace or posting things on social media or speaking up when you see anti-Semitism in public transportation. So, it's like, the sad thing is that we are the people we've been waiting for. No one is coming to help us. But the silver lining of October 7 is that there are so many people that have woken up and understand that they need to speak up. And again, it comes in all shapes and forms. There's no one way to do it.
Great, thank you so much. Let's give everyone